All right, so we are dealing with raster graphics. This section we are dealing with image basics. So even before we get into, using a specific program, I just want to kind of talk about photography as a concept. Obviously, when I talk about photography, we're talking about static photos. Photographs have been around for more than 100 years at this point. This is not a photography class, but we could go through the history of photography, the equipment being used. Obviously, in the last 20, little less than 20 years, photography has definitely changed a lot with the advent of handheld cameras in phones and things like that. But imagery has always been used to invoke ideas, emotions, concepts. Uh, you know, there's an old phrase, a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So, just the idea that essentially, you can convey things in visuals that maybe are more difficult or hard to do with, the written word. So these are just some examples of famous images throughout time. This is the kissing sailor, very famous, very reproduced photo. The photo is right after World War II, where America claims victory over Japan. So obviously, it invokes, national pride of the U.S., the joy of ending war and that kind of thing. Um, Here is Muhammad Ali after changing his name from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali, winning the World Heavyweight Championship from then the champion Sonny Liston in 1965. Very famous sports photo. This is right before, or about right when Muhammad Ali would become more of a cultural icon, fortunately a cultural icon, but also an icon or part of the civil rights movement that was occurring in the 1960s in America. This is The Unknown Rebel, 1989, very famous photograph of uh, tanks in China and having this one sort of person standing up, sort of some people would view it as like a David versus Goliath kind of situation, one person versus the government. Raising of the flag of Iwo Jima, very famous pose. You may have seen it in sculpture form. Once again, kind of representing the victory of the US, the victory in the war, the end of the war, the sort of winning of Western American values, that sort of thing. A lot of it gets brought up. This is a man on the moon, very first photograph taken off of the planet Earth. So, showing the equipment, the technology, our advancement as a society into the space race. This was also during the Cold War, so there was a little bit of like showmanship of like we're showing up the USSR, which is modern day Russia. Photography doesn't always have to be positive. I mean, many people might argue that this is negative. This is the Hindenburg crash, 1937, a natural, or that's not natural disaster, but a disaster in the sense of, you know, um, a horrific thing happening and this being documented with photography as opposed to just being written about in, a newspaper article or something along those lines. All right. In the next video, I am going to be discussing RAS pixels and the interface. Well, okay. Actually, I take that back. Whichever program you're going to use, whether Adobe Photoshop or Adobe, Photopea.com, they're all going to be based off the idea of pixels. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about what a pixel is. A pixel is a square. And it is the most basic unit of measurement on a screen. Okay. Unfortunately, I can't show you this because I don't think the screen recording technology will let me do this. But what I want to, if we were in person, like in a classroom, what I would do is if you had, some sort of image and, I could take an actual ruler and measure the distance from here to here. The thing about digital assets as opposed to a physical asset like an actual physical photo or, like a painting or something like that is that digital photos can be enhanced, enlarged, right? So for instance, let's say this is like 1 inch here. It's a little bigger than that, but let's just hypothetically say it's an inch. On a digital sense, I can always actually blow it up like that. So, unlike, say, a physical entity like an actual photograph, like a physical photograph that you can touch or a painting, digital graphics don't have an actual, finite size. You can't measure them in a finite measurement like, like an inch or a centimeter or something like that. So instead, we use pixels. Okay. At the end of the day, a pixel is a square, roughly, like looks like this. And a pixels are arranged in rows and in columns. Okay. And each one of these photos, don't worry about what I'm doing, can have its own unique color. So what I mean by that is I can make this pixel red, and I can make this pixel blue, and I can make this pixel purple, and so on and so on. And if I wanted to, for instance, make the letter A, what I could do is go, okay, I am going to take these 4 pixels up, 3 pixels wide, 4 pixels down, and then 1 pixel there. And then I have the letter A. Okay. Now, eventually what you do is you can, um, if I were to zoom out, the way this works is when you have a lot of pixels, all with a bunch of unique individual colors, you can build a much more complex image, a more complex, representation. Okay. So when I talk about pixels, I like to think of it a little bit like sometimes I kind of refer to them like Lego pieces, like how like in Legos you can have the little one Lego pieces of different colors and you could like put them all together to form like this block. That's a little bit kind of like how a pixel is in relationship to a computer or some sort of digital device like this. Another way I kind of think of it is like um, pieces of tile in a mosaic. So like these are all individual color pieces of tile that when put together make a bigger composition. Or to put it in a sort of art perspective, there's a famous painter named Chuck Close, and he paints these little sort of dots, as you can kind of see here. And if you step back far enough, they actually form something that's a little bit more representational. Like here, it looks kind of abstract, right? This kind of look like circles and blobs. Here, they are, representation of a face. Okay. So that's kind of how pixels are. And so whether we're using, Photoshop or Photopea, keep in mind that we're going to be dealing, when we talk about raster graphics, what we're really talking about are pixels. Okay.